Hi everybody, so today we're going to start a new series on customers. Over the next couple of weeks we're going to talk about different things about customers. Finding customers, keeping customers, mapping out data from customers, collecting customer data, all the kind of really fun stuff about customers. Today we're really going to focus on finding new customers and why it's so important that you are always on the lookout to find new customers. Let's face it, without your customer, you would not have a business. So you need to get total customer knowledge, and I have 4 questions for you to consider when you're thinking about your customer. So before you do anything with a customer, the first thing you have to find out is, how do you track their purchases? Do you know what the most popular items are that you sell? Do you know what the popular dishes are that you make? Your most favorite items, in spring, in summer, in fall, or in winter. Do you have a method of tracking your sales? When you accept credit cards, do those sales go into one account? If you accept cash, do the sales go in a different account? Do you manage your receipts? Do you keep track of everything electronically, or is everything on paper? Once you have all your tracking, do you actually look at it, and do you go back to it every month, every quarter, and find out what your sales are? Are your sales consistent from quarter to quarter? Are your sales consistent from the year before until this year? Do you see a trend? Do you do anything about the trend? And then, are you using that tracking data to evaluate your business? If a new product is selling better than another product, do you reconfigure your business layout? Do you put that product closer to the door? Do you put it closer to the cash register? Do you change it on the menu? Do you move that item higher in the menu? Do you bold that item? Do you call out that item? When you're doing advertisements, do you advertise for the items that are trending? Keep in mind that people read websites the same way they read newspapers. So make sure that your most popular items are in the upper left-hand corner, and your least favorite items are probably near the bottom of the page. So a little story for you. One of my clients is a restaurant. They called me to come in and do a new advertising campaign for them. And one of the questions I had for them is, what is your most popular item? What are the items that you want to push? And everyone around the table, there were probably 5 or 6 people, gave me a different item that they thought was the most popular item that they sold. And when I asked for customer data or sales data, I found out that the items that were the most popular were none of them that were mentioned around the table. And I was able to prove to them that these items aren't always the top sellers every single week, but they're consistent sellers throughout the entire year. So while they're thinking of items that are hot for the month of May, the month of June, they're forgetting about the items that are consistent throughout the entire year. And when you add them up for the whole entire year, those items were the most popular items that they sold, and they weren't even aware of it. So this next question is a little pet peeve of mine. I've been walking around Mount Joy, going into different businesses, and going to businesses in Lancaster, going into businesses in E-Town, and I'm always curious as to how people interact with me when I walk into the door. So my question to you is, when your customers come in, do you do any of these things? Do you initiate a conversation with them? One of the things that makes a customer feel really good and will probably cause them to buy something is if they walk into the door and someone approaches them with a smile, with a handshake, or says, "Hey, how are you doing today? And what are you looking for? How can I help you?" Those kind of things draw the customer into a business. And by drawing a customer into a business, it will cause them to buy something from you. So when you interact with your customers, do you ever learn where they live? The big thing is, are they local or are they out of town? Do you treat an out-of-towner different than you would treat someone who is local? I would recommend not doing that, because you never know if the out-of-town guest is actually going to be moving to the area or maybe knows someone in the area, and that's why they came into your shop. When you ask them where they live, and if they say that they're local, ask them where they are. Do they live near the library? Do they live near Giant? Do they live in a development? Kind of start tracking some data to find out, where are people coming from? It'll help you in the long run. Have you ever taken the time to ask, well, what do you like? What are you looking for? Follow them around and kind of watch what they're looking for. See what they pick up. See what they hold. See what they're kind of shaking their head on, good or bad. Take a look and ask them, what is it you're looking for? What can I carry in my store that would cause you to come in and make it a frequent stop? And then last, find out what they look for to make a purchase. If they pick something up and they look it over but they put it back down, when they come up to the counter or before they leave, ask them, why didn't you buy that one item over there? I saw you picked it up. Just kind of curious as to what would have made you purchase that item. Could be something like, well, the price is too high, it's not the right color, not the right flavor, I prefer a different brand of item. Or maybe they were just looking and they're interested, but they don't know how to use the item. They don't know what they would use it for. And that's an opportunity for you to jump in there and give them ideas on how they can use that item or what they could pair other items with in your store that that item would work with, and then make that sale. The whole thing about interacting with customers is the more you learn about your customers, even the ones that don't buy anything, the better you can guide your business. Even non-purchasing customers can help you determine what to change in your business. If there are too many people that are walking in and not buying anything, if you don't ask them, why didn't you buy something today, or what is it that you're looking for that I can carry, you're never going to know what people are looking for. And if you never change your inventory or never pick up new products or change the brand of product or change the make and model numbers or colors or scents or flavors, whatever it is, then you're never going to sell because you're always going to have the same products that no one is interested in. Have you ever been somewhere in the public and you overhear a conversation and people are talking about some place in Mount Joy or some place in Lancaster, wherever you are, and you listen really intently because you want to hear who they're talking about, and then you realize they're talking about you. You just kind of sit and listen, and you don't interrupt them. You want to hear what they're going to say about you, and hopefully it's good. I was in a restaurant one day, and I overheard two people talking at a table next to mine about how they needed one of them needed a website, and the other one goes, hey, you got to talk to this guy in Mount Joy I know. And I didn't even realize who that customer was, but he had worked for a company that I did work for. And even though he wasn't directly involved in the project, he was able to tell the other person at the table that they needed to call me to get their website built. And when I heard that conversation end, I actually walked over to them, dropped my business card off, and introduced myself, and just said, hey, I wanted to let you know I was eavesdropping on your conversation. Wanted to wait to hear what you guys said about me, but here's my card. Give me a call, and I'll help you out with that project. But have you ever been somewhere and you heard people talking about you and it wasn't good? I've been in a situation before where I've heard people talk about a client of mine and they did not have good things to say. And later on in that day, I would call my client and say, hey, listen, I got to tell you about a conversation I heard about you, and go into the conversation and let them know, I don't know if you know this specific case that they were talking about, or I don't know if you knew who these people were, but this is a conversation I overheard about you. And then we talked about it and found out what went wrong and figured out what they can use to learn from that conversation that I overheard. And have you ever been somewhere and you don't know anybody in the area, and all of a sudden it strikes you, hey, if I would just advertise, these people could really use my business. I know in my business, I did a lot of work for nonprofits. I did a lot of work for churches. And I went to a nonprofit meeting in Lancaster probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And I heard everybody talking about how expensive it was to get a website done, and they couldn't trust anybody, and no one really knew anybody locally that would do a good job. And I thought to myself, if I only advertise to this group, I might be able to pick up some customers here. So I decided to talk to the organization and find out what it would take to advertise or to give a free seminar to the group. And by doing that, I was able to pick up 4 or 5 new clients. But have you ever been somewhere and you're looking around and maybe it's not your business, but when you're talking to people, you could say, oh, there's this business I know that could really benefit from these people. When you are in those situations, get as much information as you can and take it back either to your business or take it back to another business that you want to help out and just say, hey, listen, I was here and I ran into these people and I really think they would do good, working with you. So let's talk about something that a lot of businesses are afraid to do, and that is collecting data on your customers. Everyone thinks this is a violation of privacy, or they feel very uncomfortable asking their customers for certain information. But in reality, there's a lot of this information that's out in the public already, and most of the information that you're collecting is not personal identifying information that if stolen can hurt somebody. It's really just the basic stuff. So at minimum, what you want to collect from your customers, their names, and not just first names, but last names too, their address, their phone, their email, anything that you need to communicate with the basics for them. So if you want to have an email list, their name and their email at minimum is what you need. If you want to do mailings, you need to have their name and their address. Phone number and emails are always good just to have in your records in case you need to reach out to them for whatever reason, or if you even want to pay someone to do phone calls for you. At minimum, that's what you want to collect from your customers. But you also want to think about some other things. Their age or age range. A lot of people are doing age ranges instead of exact ages. So are they 20 to 25, 25 to 30? I wouldn't do 10-year increments. I would do more 5-year increments. It helps you narrow things down a little bit better. Other places that they like. Where do they like to shop? Do they like to go to Target? Do they like to go to Boscov's? Do they like to go to custom boutique shops? What kind of grocery stores do they like to shop at? Some people will give you this information. Some people won't give you the information. If you do have the information, collect it. It will give you an idea as to what kind of income they have, what kind of disposable income do they have. All of this is important, as you'll see a little bit later on. Get their birthday. Offer them a special if they give a birthday. And then the month of their birthday, give them 5% off a purchase, or give them a free dessert, or give them something that would make them come back into your store, make them feel better. And also keep track of all the purchases that they make. So it goes back to that very initial thing about having some sort of tracking for your products and your sales. Keep track of the purchases they make. Think about any special requests that they have. You will know most of your customers that have special requests. I remember doing work in our church, and we would have one person that would come into the dinners that we would have, and they would always ask for their tea in a ceramic cup. They didn't like using styrofoam cups. They didn't like using plastic cups. They had to have a ceramic cup. And every time she would walk in, we would know to get the cup out and get it ready because we knew she was going to ask for it. But a lot of customers have special requests. Some customers only shop in the summer. They won't shop in the winter. Some, when they come in, you know exactly what they want. You know exactly what their favorite dessert is. You know what their favorite meal is. You know what product they're going to buy. You have it ready for them. Or they could even call you and you would have it ready for them. I had one client in Lancaster that one of their favorite customers got ill, and their customer would call up and they offered to deliver products to their house. That's total customer service. But again, that was one of their favorite customers in the store too, a very repeat customer, and that store that I work with would bend over backwards to keep them as a customer. So anything like that, you want to keep data on your customers, and I would recommend doing it in some sort of spreadsheet. It makes it easy to manipulate the data and search the data. If you know how to use Microsoft Access or another kind of database, put it into a database. Again, it makes it very easy to pull the data out, run reports. And then the last question is, do you ever survey your customers? That could be an electronic survey like SurveyMonkey, which is free, or you can do a paper survey or a verbal survey. The only problem with a verbal survey, though, is you have to document all the answers. If you have a paper survey or if you have an electronic survey, people who are completing the survey do the work, and all you have to do is store the data. But make sure that if you do survey your customers, you do store the data, because you want to go back and take a look at it. So right about now you're probably going, oh my gosh, Dave, what am I going to do with all this information? Why do I need to track all this information about my customers? What does it really matter? So actually, this is the really fun part of everything. This is why I kind of answer the question, why do you need to do this? You're going to get all this information about your customer. You're going to get their name, you're going to get their location, their age, their purchase history, their lifestyle. And the lifestyle is going to be questions like, where do they like to shop? What kind of products do they buy? Do they buy high-end products, lower-end products, high-end meals, low-end meals, things like that? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What kind of requests do they have when they come in and ask you for things? What are they asking for? What do they want you to carry? What different things do they want you to offer? And then what other kind of interests do they have? A lot of these things you're going to pick up from talking to them. The more you get to know your customer, the more you can fill out some of this information. But eventually, what you're doing is, for each of your main customers or your repeat customers, you want to know this stuff. And for all of your customers, eventually, you want to have at least the basics: the name, location, age, purchase history. Those four things at minimum are what you really want to get for your customer. So now the real fun starts. We're going to take a look at what you do with all this information and how you're going to use it to put together some ideas or some results on knowing about your customer. So we're going to take a look at some of the basic things that you might have collected. And you're going to group things together. So let's say you take all of your customer data that you have and you group them by location, you group them by age. If you have general lifestyle kind of ideas, whether they're middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, lower class, very high upper class, however you group it together. Maybe you want to do it as contemporary, traditional, however you kind of group your customers together as their lifestyle. And then you're going to have a purchase history. What are the products that people buy? And group them together by the types of products that they buy. And then you're going to have things like likes and dislikes and requests and interests. What you're trying to do is you're trying to take each of your upper categories, such as location, age, lifestyle, purchase history, and you're going to be trying to come up with lines or generalities about some of the lower things. Sometimes to make this work better, it is nice to kind of do it on paper, where you take an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and you write at the top, Florin Hill Development, and maybe that's where a lot of your customers are. Or maybe you have a lot of customers on Main Street, Mount Joy, or a lot of customers just in Mount Joy in general. And then maybe another location would be the Cress or the Elms, or maybe it will be the Orchards out by the library, or maybe it'll be Marietta or Lancaster or Maytown or Elizabethtown. However you decide what your location centers are going to be, that's entirely up to you how you do that. And then do the same thing with age. 20 to 25, 25 to 30. If you want to do 10 years and do 20 to 30, you can. It's going to be more specific to break it down into 5-year groups. And then with your lifestyles, and then with your purchase history. For purchase history, again, group it any way that you would normally group your products. So if you are a retail store, maybe you want to group your purchase histories based on the category of your products. If you are a restaurant or you are a beverage disperser, maybe you want to group them based on the categories: beef products, chicken products, pork products, fish products. Or if you are a bar, beers, liquor, mixed drink cocktails, things like that. However you want to break it up. Whatever's going to make the most sense to you. And then what you want to try and do is try and correlate some of the things on the bottom with the different locations. So you're going to draw these lines from one group to another group, and you're going to try and come up with some general idea about the people who live on Main Street in Mount Joy. What you're going to do is you're going to try and come up with some sort of general idea about people. So maybe the people on Main Street like candles, or maybe the people on Main Street prefer chicken over beef, or maybe the people on Main Street are beer drinkers and they're not hard liquor drinkers. And then do the same thing for ages. Maybe people who are 25 to 30 prefer meals from $10 to $15, or maybe they prefer I don't know, pies compared to cupcakes, or maybe they prefer hard liquor to beer. Whatever you want to come up with. What this is going to help you do is it's going to help you start to put together when someone walks through the door of your shop, or door of your restaurant, door of your business, whatever it is. You're going to start to think about what you need to do to kind of pitch them a certain product or get ready for what they may be purchasing. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up on this slide linking everything together. So you're going to have all these generalities between everything. Ideally, what you want to come up with is some sort of idea saying people in Mount Joy between 25 and 30 really like this thing that I offer. And then you're going to say people in Maytown between 30 and 35 really like this product that I'm offering. What this is going to help you do, it's going to help you figure out who your customer is in these areas, and do you have the right products for the customers that are shopping in your business. So if you want to focus more on bringing in people in Mount Joy, what are your generalities about the people of Mount Joy? Keep in mind that all of this is really experimental. You could change, and that's why it's important that you keep track of purchase history, you keep track of your customer data, you take a look at trends that are in your business, and then you adapt to them. So maybe Mount Joy in general loves, we'll say, candles, and in 6 months from now you notice that your candle sales are through the roof. Well, then maybe in month number 7 or month number 8 your candle sales start to decline. Well, have you gone back and taken a look at your purchase history to see if there is a trend in candle sales during those same months, and this is more of a seasonal thing, or is it a longer term trend where maybe candles aren't the thing in Mount Joy anymore, and maybe it's incense or something else? And the same thing with restaurants. Maybe chicken dishes are really great, but they're only really good from March until August. And then in August, beef dishes pick up. And then in September, maybe seafood is popular, or whatever it is. Take a look at your history and find out if there is a trend that you can adapt to. And when people are coming in, if you notice that your crowd is getting younger, what is the trend of the younger crowd based on your history? And you have to adapt your business in order to keep up with how your customers are coming in the door. So this is a really, really fun thing to do. Yes, it does take a lot of time. I will not tell you that this is something that you're going to get right away. It's not something that can be done within a week. This could be months of work on your end. But in the long run, after you do it, it really does give you a good idea of who your customer is. Now, maybe those 4 things were too much for you. So what you do is then you just narrow it down. So instead of using 4 things, maybe you just want to focus on 2 things. So in this case, we're just going to focus on location and age. And maybe those are the 2 things that you can start with that you have a better handle on. So maybe you don't really want to get involved with your customers and kind of know their lifestyle. Maybe you feel guilty by trying to judge your customers, whether they're upper class, middle class, lower class, contemporary, traditional, however you want to group them. But location is something easier to track, and age is something easier to track. And maybe that's all you're concerned about. Then just start with those 2 things and focus on those 2 things. When I did a scenario for one of my customers in the restaurant industry, and we took a look at their popular food that they thought was popular and it wasn't, the next thing we did was I asked them, well, what do the people 40 to 50 like to eat in your restaurant? And what do the people from 20 to 40 like to eat in your restaurant? And they all looked at me and they said, well, why don't you tell us what the people want to eat in the restaurant? So instead of me asking them, they realized they really didn't know. So we took a look again at all their sales records, and we tried to match up as close as we could of their sales records and what they thought the age of their customers were, because they didn't capture any of that on surveys. What we did is we developed a survey that they gave all of their customers at the end of every meal. They offered to collect the surveys, and at the end of the month, a random survey was going to win a free dessert at the next time they came in. Desserts to them only cost maybe $1.50 to $2. So to them it wasn't a huge money loss, but the information that they got from the surveys was incredible. One of the things they put on the surveys was, give me your name, give me your address, give me your phone number, give me your email, and then also what age range are you? And then what they did is when they brought the survey back, they wrote on the survey what their invoice number or receipt number was in their system. So then that way when we went back and we downloaded all the data from their sales service, we could then match up the information from the surveys to what they bought. And then we were finally able to say people between 20 and 30 bought these meals, majority. And then people from 30 to 40 or 30 to 50, whatever range we were using, you could tell exactly what they bought. You could tell what days of the week they came in. You could tell what time of the night they came in or time of the day they came in. You could even tell how long they stayed because their system had a time when the ticket was open, when a ticket was ordered, and then when a ticket was closed out. So you can actually see, did they spend 40 minutes in the restaurant? Did they spend 15 minutes in the restaurant? And all that information, although it was a lot of information to go through, gave a lot of context as to who the customer was. We did the same thing for a retail client too. So in a retail client, we were able to put paper surveys out or electronic surveys at the cash register. So when they came in and they paid for their items, they would just say, what zip code do you live in and what is your age range? And that's all we needed to know. They weren't so concerned about the name. They weren't so concerned about the exact location of where they lived. They just wanted the zip code. They wanted to know how old they were and then what products they bought. So when they did advertising, they could then pinpoint their ads more centric to the zip code of where their customers were. Even if you just work with a couple of things, you can still get a lot of customer data from it. It's just a little extra work, and you have to train your employees on capturing the information, and you have to be diligent on making sure every customer gets a survey or gets asked the questions, and you do record it. But once you start it, keep up with it and keep using it. And in today's age, people are so used to giving information about how old they are or zip codes. Most people are not going to blink an eye when you ask them the question. Go ahead and try it and see what happens. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up boiling this down, and you're going to start to write down statements. Don't think of the statements, actually write them down. Here are my conclusions, and start writing them down, start documenting them, and then test them. Go out and ask the employees, hey, I notice these kind of trends. Are these the trends that you notice? And see if the employees agree with you. In some cases, they may say, yeah, that's exactly who our customer is. In other cases, they may be like, yeah, I never really thought about it. I'd have to pay attention to it a little bit more. Or in some cases, they may just say, no, that's not who our customer is. And maybe they'll tell you who the customer is. Write that information down. Compare it with what you have and see if maybe their assumption might be off. But then you actually watch and you see with your eyes, are your assumptions the same as what your conclusions are with the data? Now again, keep in mind, this is all experimental. It could work, it could not work, but it's a really interesting thing to do because it does tell you a lot about who your customer is. So what we're going to talk about next week is, what do we really do once we have all this data, once we have some of the general assumptions that we're going to make off this data, then what do? We have all this data, Do I just look at it? Do I do anything with it? Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about what you can do with this. If you are a business that has no idea where to even start with any of this stuff, give me a call, 717-653-4227, or send me an email, info@mainstreetmountjoy.com. Just say, hey Dave, can you come in, take a look at what I'm doing in my business? I will be more than happy to sit down with you. It's free to you guys, from the Main Street program. Everything that we talk about is going to be confidential. I will never share your data with anyone else. If I use it in an example, it'll be a general assumption. It won't be anyone specific, just as an example of how it can help other people. I will be more than happy to sit down with you and find out what kind of systems you have, maybe even recommend some other systems that are out there that you could use, take a look at how you're using the data, and really walk you through capturing some of this data, because I think it's really important as a business owner to capture some of this data. I know in my web design business I would do it. Within the first 6 months, I knew my perfect customer was a small business between 1 and 25 employees, mostly between Mount Joy and 25-mile radius of Mount Joy, and that's who I knew who my customer was. I would do some large businesses, I would do some medium-sized businesses, but the customers that I always did the best with were the small customers. In the 20 years that I had my web design business, that stayed true. Now, in the last 10 years of my web design business, I did branch out. I did a lot of work outside of Lancaster County. In fact, most of my work was outside of Lancaster County. But that was a conscious decision on my end to go ahead and do that. To this day, even though my web design business is closed and I still work with some of my clients, I still get requests from people, and they are still the small businesses within 1 to 20 employees, 25 employees, and still within that 25-mile radius of Mount Joy. Those are the clients that I still consider to do work with, and those are people I still consider to be my clients. So as I'm starting to grow my wood business and I'm doing all my wood carvings and everything else, I'm starting to develop who my perfect customer is. Still haven't sold enough to kind of get that customer, but I do have an idea of who my customer is, and I'm going to be applying these methods to it as well. And every time I have a show, I start to survey my customers and write everything down at the end of my show and keep track of it. I'm even doing this in my own little wood design business. Keep in mind, that's what Main Street Mount Joy is here for. We are here to help you, so please do not be afraid to call or email and ask us to help you out. See you guys till next week.